So you wind up in a perfectly legal fight, which escalates to the use of deadly force. How much trouble are you going to get in? Tom, I got a great scenario for you in just a minute. But first, folks, we have a gun giveaway going on. It's happening right now. It is absolutely free, but it does end really soon. So click the link in the description down below to find out which brand new gun you could win. All right, Tom, let me set the place for you here. You know that you have the perfect legal right to use objectively reasonable force to stop an unlawful interference. If you, as an honest law-abiding citizen, do that, and your fight escalates to the point now that you need to use deadly force, how much trouble are you in? How much of a mess is this from a legally defensive standpoint?
Well, it's going to depend on whether or not you can establish that when you use deadly force, you're privileged to do so. Right? And that's a lot easier said than done, just to be clear, particularly if we're talking about an event with no decisive moment, right? So if you're in an event with no decisive moment, so in other words, if you're just in a mutual fisticuffs and the other guy starts to get the upper hand, in the eyes of a lot of people, may not be a decisive moment. Now, in the eyes of a lot of other people, that can absolutely be the decisive moment. If you're on the ground, they're not backing off, all that kind of stuff. That can be a big problem, right? But anytime you have a fight without any kind of deadly weapon, and suddenly, oftentimes, the person who's losing the fight produces a deadly weapon, those can create some very difficult cases because there's always going to be that segment of society out there who says you're not allowed to bring a gun to a fist fight. Regardless of anything else.
You know, I'll drop the Johnny Cash lyric, he come up with a knife and cut off a piece of my ear. That's a pretty decisive situation where you're fighting, now he's got a knife, now you pull out your gun. I can see where that, from a defense attorney standpoint, that would be like, okay, it's kind of clear cut. I hope the prosecutor agrees. Barring something like that, it could just be, wow, you're going to hope that you have a better attorney than the prosecutor because this is going to go off the rails for you.
Well, a lot of it's going to come down to the type of jurors that you get, the type of voir dire, which is early on in the trial. That's the selection process for the jurors and so forth. There's a lot of different factors it's going to hinge on. Just at the end of the day, let me be emphatically clear. I am 100% in support of the notion that it can be appropriate to use a firearm against an unarmed attacker or an unarmed individual.
Yep.
I'm 100% in that. It's going to 100% depend upon the context and what's going on.
Yeah.
Right? There are going to be people who will disagree with what I just said. They're going to say 100% of the time, you can never use a firearm against an unarmed individual, regardless of whether or not they're attacking you, you're losing the fight, you're about to lose consciousness, whatever the case may be. They will just draw a bright line and say never. That's going to be deeply problematic for you if one of those people wind up being on your jury, let alone if 10 or 12 of those people wind up being on your jury. So you can do a lot to try to protect yourself against that, but at the end of the day, there's definitely, if you just get your whole jury pool that thinks that way, maybe you live in the wrong part of the United States where there's this groupthink that kind of looks like that, and you're more likely to get a jury pool that thinks like that. That's going to be an uphill battle. I'm not saying impossible. I'm just saying it's going to be a deeply uphill battle.
And I'm starting from that position that, yes, you have the right to use, like I said, objectively reasonable force to stop this interference. You have the right to do that. But the reason this came to mind, this question came up, is that maybe people need to be thinking a little bit about conflict avoidance. That do they really need to be in that fight? And in some cases, the scenario that pops in my head is somebody's breaking into your car. And you have the right to go out there and say, stop breaking into my car. And if that turns into a fight for your life, I'm certain that there's going to be a prosecutor somewhere who says, you shouldn't have gone out there. Why did you even go out there?
Every prosecutor.
You caused this. And I'm like, wait a minute.
Every prosecutor. Yeah, so I call that, but-for thinking, right? Well, but for you going outside to stop that person breaking in your car, we never would have been here. And of course, you can totally flip that around and say, but for the person breaking into my car, I wouldn't have had to go outside. But for that person fighting me rather than running away when I told them to stop, we wouldn't be here. But for that person trying to Johnny Cash me Mike Tyson in my ear, right? Yeah. We wouldn't be here. But that's not what the prosecutor's me thinking. Like,
Yeah.
just trust me. That's not what the prosecutor, not all of them, but
Yeah.
many of them are going to be thinking.
And then we got to hope that the jury can go far back enough on the but-for thinking to like, wait a minute, the bad guy shouldn't have done the bad thing first. And I don't know that we can always count on that. I mean, hope is not a good legal strategy.
But for thinking is, when we're talking about a criminal case, it's not necessarily at all what the law is. Like, let's be clear.
Yeah.
But there's what the law says, and then there's what the facts are. And there's a handful of cliches in law. One of them is, if you've got the facts, pound the facts. If you've got the law, pound the law. If you've got neither, pound the table. People may have heard of that one. So you may have what you and I definitely, and I suspect a lot of viewers as well, would absolutely consider strong law on our side. We may consider to be strong facts on our side to back that up as well. That, hey, at a certain point, yeah, the person who just sliced off my ear or part of my ear and is not running away and is saying they're going to kill me, or whatever else the case may be, yeah, that's a problem, right? And at that point, I'm absolutely going to be privileged to use deadly force because I'm in reasonable fear of imminent death or great bodily harm. But if you change the facts, and now we start to ask the jurors to look through this through a but-for analysis and all this other kind of stuff. Now, hopefully you have a strong enough attorney to be able to correct the jurors and to be able to, perhaps, if the judge will allow that, object to those arguments. And just while we're on this topic, a lot of times people will say, oh, well, a good attorney can get rid of that. And yes, a good attorney can address that. But at the end of the day, if you've got a judge that's just going to decide to call everything a ball, right? I'm pitching strikes as far as objections go. I know that I should be getting these calls. But if I've got a judge that's just like, no, 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 and if I've got a court of appeals that's just going to keep like backing this up and everything else, the world's best attorney can only do so much. Now, ideally, the world's best attorney is going to be able to anticipate that, but it doesn't change the fact that depending upon the nature of your judge, that strike zone is going to realistically shrink or grow to your disadvantage or to your advantage. And it's not like I can just press a button and make a judge agree with me.
Yeah.
And any attorney that's being honest is going to agree with that statement. Every criminal defense attorney, we've all had shared experiences in court, probably no matter where you are in the country, probably no matter what country you're in for that matter, where I have been in court and I have quoted black letter law to the judge, and the judge doesn't get on board with,
Yeah.
I mean, and
That's not what that means.
Right, no, and it's just, and in the particular case I'm thinking of, I even provided an interpretation of that to show how exactly down the middle of the strike zone this was by the University of Wisconsin, which it's like, just so we're clear, Judge, here's a 2-paragraph synopsis by the most prestigious university, along with Marquette, in the state of Wisconsin, who has said, this is the interpretation of this law, and the judge goes, I'm going to go this way with it. Every defense attorney, if they're being honest, has had that. I know there's people in the comment section who are going to say, well, that means you're not a good defense attorney. No, every defense attorney has had that. This is just like, there's that expression about race car drivers. There's two types of race car drivers, or drivers who are doing track days and that kind of stuff. Those who have crashed and those who will.
Yes.
Right? Same thing's going to happen with defense attorneys. You're going to get these cases that this is not a close call. This is 100% I should win this, not 9 out of 10 times, 10 out of 10 times. You're not going to win them 10 out of 10 times. You're not going to win anything 100% of the time when it comes to court. You're just not.
Yeah. And for me, this scenario just, again, tells everyone why jump in the Shark Tank. Think seriously about what you're going to do, that first step you're going to take, because it could spiral wildly out of control.
So thank you for allowing me to grab the microphone hostage here to go on my soapbox about this. But the reason why this is relevant is exactly what you just said, is we may have a perfectly reasonable, backed up by law and evidence discussion explaining why you acted in perfect harmony in accordance with the law. Whether that's the law of the state, whether that's the law of nature, you name it, right? But it doesn't change the fact that there is no scenario that you will win 1,000 out of 1,000 times.
Yeah.
There's always going to be the times where you take the L if we're having a perfectly honest conversation. And I don't like that. You don't like that. That is the way it goes, though.
Just one more thing to consider. Thanks again, Tom. Always love your insights. Truly appreciate it. Folks, thank you for watching all the way to the end. And I'll remind you again, we got that gun giveaway going on, happening right now. It is absolutely free, so click the link in the description down below to find out which brand new gun you could win.